All right, what's up, everybody? This is Ryan here, and you're watching another Q&A. So, of course, Wednesdays are when I do my regular Q&A session, and then earlier on Monday, I didn't really have the energy to put together a lesson plan, so I did a Q&A on Monday instead, also on the YouTubes. So my plan is next Monday I will be back on Twitch doing a lesson or doing something anyways, and that's actually something I'm going to think about because I might eventually get bored of doing the lessons and possibly do some live coding there. But yeah, for now, today is the Q&A, and yeah, here we are. So just some pre-show banter. It was a very interesting day at work for me. I ended up working an hour later than usual, which is fine because at this particular company, if I work an hour later on one day, I can leave an hour earlier on the other day, which is much appreciated. And I definitely plan to do that on Friday. But it was a very fascinating day for me. And I can't talk too much about it, but it was just interesting to see just the different uh, how the dynamic of working at a place changes. So I started at this company, Silver Orange, they're called, in March 2nd or March 3rd, I think. And so my 6-month review is actually coming up in, I think it's next week. So yeah, it's just interesting to see since I've been there, there's been a new addition to the mobile team, and so I'm no longer the most junior member. And yeah, it's just overall, it's been a great experience, and it's been interesting to work directly with clients in many cases. The previous role I had, I was basically working for the investors in the company. What's up, Harish? And that was a kind of a different experience because in either case they're like stakeholders, but when it comes to like the investors, um, of course, me being a developer, I didn't have a huge amount of influence on what got filtered up to that level. But it, I don't know, it felt a little bit more like when it came to the investors, it was like they say jump and we say how high. Like, whereas with dealing with clients, it feels, at least with the client that we're working with, a lot more like we're sort of advising them to a certain degree. And so yeah, it's just a different dynamic. And yeah, last week I was there. I was in Charlottetown, PEI, which is where headquarters was, and had the chance to hang out with people for the whole week. And that was really great. The people I work with are really awesome, and I'm not just saying that. Every company I've worked with before, in every business, there's always been at least one person who's like a little bit toxic, and I can't get over how in this particular company, I there's not actually anyone I can point to in the company of about like 35 people, 30 to 35 people, who I'm like, oh yeah, that person is like kind of a sociopath or something like that. I actually got to hang out with a bunch of people in different teams, and yeah, they're all really great people. Good morning, Karon. So, anyways, it was a really great experience. I'm pretty well just rambling to fill time here. Um, I guess one thing I'm gonna think about is, so when I started doing the live streams again, which was about a month ago, I kind of had this idea in my head that I wanted to do Twitch and YouTube, and I still want to do that. I'm just wondering about the model of it because I don't expect that on Twitch I'll get much in the way of uh, viewers when it comes to the Q&As, at least relative to YouTube, although YouTube hasn't been spectacular either. But I do think I set out to do lessons on Monday, and I'm already starting to run low on topics that I actually wanted to talk about. because there's a lot of topics that I talk about regularly. Apologies if I'm sniffling. It's just allergies or something like that. But I've talked about like getting a job, interview prep. I've talked about testing already. I'm sure I'll do a lesson on general software architecture, but I kind of have to prepare for that one for a while because it's been a little while since I've taught that. But I kind of see myself pretty quick getting bored of teaching things and or running out of topics more specifically. So I'll have to think about what I end up doing on Twitch because at the end of the day, I generally only have an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do the live streaming. So I'd have to see if doing live coding is like feasible if I only have an hour to do it. Anyways, any questions? Yeah, look. So it's a long weekend coming up for me. Uh, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off, so that'll be fun. And as I discussed earlier, I get to leave work an hour early on Friday because I did an hour extra yesterday. So should be a pretty fun weekend for me. Yeah, I can't think of much. Trying to think of something to ramble about here. Did I plan my weekend out on as? Yeah, um, loosely. I'm the type of person to plan just about everything, but yep. So it's actually my partner's birthday weekend. Her birthday's on Saturday, so we've got plans for at least Friday and Saturday. So yeah, I can't go into too much detail about those plans. I do have a gift for her, one of several gifts. But yeah, that'd be lots of fun. We're probably gonna have really expensive sushi. That's pretty much the plan. Oh, that's a fun question. Our friend Erd asks, "How did content creation help your career so far?" This is actually I've never been asked this question before, or at least I don't recall. And now that I think about it, more ways than you might imagine, and possibly some ways that you probably didn't imagine. So my brain's buffering an answer here, but I think the biggest thing that stood out is making connections with people. Um, Early on, I had no mentors. I didn't even really have peers. I was just teaching myself to code and building Android apps. And of course, when you're learning to code, if you have no direction, and oftentimes even if you have direction, the code that you write is terrible. No architecture, um, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. So I didn't have a good feedback mechanism, is kind of what I'm getting at. Um, so connections with people through content creation um, gave me a number of things. So it gave me a feedback mechanism on code quality and what I was teaching people. And that was incredibly important because as when I started out in, I think what happened is I started just doing videos on like specific topics like the recycler view on Android. And then I wanted to learn more about topics like software architecture and those sorts of things that I wasn't very good at. And in my excitement to learn those things, I also started teaching them. And I realized I didn't really have the experiential knowledge to really deeply grasp a lot of those things on a nuanced level. Um, and so it's funny because in a way I feel like I started teaching a bit too early, or I taught things like a terrific example was solid principles. I don't teach them anymore because I don't think they're actually a useful vehicle. I shouldn't say that. They are not my preferred vehicle for teaching software architecture and design principles. I think there's much simpler ways to teach that that are more accessible to beginners. That's just my opinion. Um, but yeah, it helped me to see that there were certain things where I didn't actually understand them as well as I thought I did. And I could get feedback on that. It gave me some friends who were all around the same level and who were trying hard to learn new things. And this was really cool. I've made some really amazing connections with people who most of whom I'd never met in real life, but I still consider friends because, back in 2016, or 2017, we went through the period in Android development where everyone was doing multi-module applications, even if there was no point in doing that. And we went through the confusion together of realizing that the single responsibility principle doesn't mean what you think it means. And that's probably the case for most of you listening to this. So, um, so yeah, that was one of the greatest things. I'm trying to think what else. So just enjoyment of life. I love teaching people. So one thing that you'll get if you start teaching people and giving them good advice is you'll start getting messages from them along the lines of like, you really helped me, or I started getting messages from people telling me you helped me get a job, for example. And I can't tell you what it's like. So I don't really deal with depression anymore. I used to. I, did 10 years of self work to not have to deal with that anymore. But back when I was dealing with that, I I can't tell you what it's like to be having a bad day and then to have some random person from across the planet say thank you. You helped me pass a test or you helped me get a job. It's really worth a lot. If you're a sociopath or whatever, it's probably not going to be that useful to you, but I'm actually quite a sensitive person and I'm very sensitive to the people around me. So that meant a lot to me. And that's mainly one of the reasons why I kept going is I just enjoyed teaching people and getting the feedback from that. Um, it did create some work opportunities. I don't think it created as many as people might think. Um, what like I don't think, for example, my current job, I don't think me being a content creator had anything to do with me getting hired. For my previous job, I think it had a little bit to do with that because the lead developer of my previous job was aware of my YouTube channel. I don't think he wasn't like someone who watched it regularly, but he was aware of it. Do I think I still would have gotten the job if I bombed the interview? No. So it didn't create too many opportunities in terms of like professional work. It has created some opportunities. Like I worked with Stream Chat, which I think is a great company, and they're really nice people there. So they sponsored a tutorial, and that was actually great timing in one sense because I was actually laid off at the start of this year from my previous company. And to be specific, the whole mobile team was laid off, not just me. And so I was able to get a contract and a sponsorship with Stream to create a tutorial for them. So that was really nice financially. So yeah, I think those are the sort of like the broad strokes. Other just soft skills, I've written nearly 40, probably actually nearly 50 articles, and some of those have been published. I think about 5 of those have been published. 4 of them are paid published, and then maybe like 6 or more have been published, like Free Code Camp, for example, which has improved my writing and teaching. I'm actually not worried about an AI taking my job as a technical writer because I know that my writing style is totally unique and not many people can explain certain topics like I can. So I'm not really concerned at all with the AI revolution in that regard. Um, I'm very used to live content, and this has been useful when it comes to, like, for example, talking in meetings with clients. I'm totally comfortable joking and being off the cuff, as they say in English, being spontaneous in like meetings. We do a lot of meetings at my current job with clients. Not a lot of meetings, but weekly meetings. And so I feel very comfortable in that kind of environment. So a lot of things, really. Yeah, a lot of things. For those who are just joining, the question was, how did content creation help your career so far? I would say these would be the main things. It can open doors for you. Um, I think if I could go back, actually, I wouldn't change anything. But one thing that took me a really long time to realize is I wanted to be like a product owner, an app develop, like an app product appreneur, let's say, um, and also teach. And I realized in retrospect that that was just too many things for me to do. And I tried to do all of those things for like 6 years, at least 5 years. And eventually I started to realize I can't actually do this. Like, I don't want to do 3 or 4 or 5 things poorly. I want to do 1 or 2 things well, which is why during this period of my career, my focus is working professionally, getting a lot of professional experience. And when it comes to content creation, I'm not doing a lot of that. I am doing like the live streams, but I'm not, I'm not cranking out tutorials or not cranking out courses, because right now I just want to focus on being a professional software developer and engineer. So yeah, but I wouldn't change any of it. It was not an easy path. For a lot of years, I, was living below the poverty line. I'm not going to glorify it. Um, and in some respects, it would have been nice to go straight into the professional field, but I wouldn't change anything. So that's basically my answer there. Fun question, though. How did content creation help my career so far? Quite a number of things. Mostly, overall, it was the people I met. I met some very smart and talented people, and one thing I loved is there are people who randomly messaged me on Slack or LinkedIn with questions, and I would spend hours answering whatever questions they had. And I want to explain why I did that in that case and not in other cases. But I would spend hours talking to them, and they would like share updates with me. And I was actually kind of a mentor for a fair number of people. And that was really cool to then see these people go on and get like awesome jobs or become content creators themselves. So, yeah. Oh, that's a fun question. These are fun. So a lot of times I just get asked very technical questions. So this is actually quite. I'm enjoying this. Someone asks, and technical questions are fine. I don't. If they're super specific, I tend not to care too much these days. But yeah. Right. How long do you think you can continue coding? Do you enjoy it? Um, I don't have a straightforward answer to that. Um, so I'm trying to think of how I can answer this. Um, I very much enjoy. Oh, I just accidentally opened up Microsoft Edge. Nice. I very much enjoy problem solving for technical problems. So this is something an aspect of coding which I believe I'll always enjoy. There's certain things that I don't enjoy very much about. Let me write this down. There's things about being an app developer I don't enjoy. And these are the sorts of things that you just have to accept as a given. And so they're, yeah. So let me take an example. In past and current companies, there have been situations where stakeholders, which generally means either a client, so someone paying my team to build their app, or investors, so someone paying my team to build their app, hence stakeholders, um, want requirement or want things, either features or requirements um, that I either don't totally agree with or they're very inconvenient. And as an app developer, I have to accept that my feelings about that kind of thing, apart from possibly giving a little bit of feedback, are irrelevant. I am being paid to build this thing for them. It's their money. Oftentimes, it's their product ultimately. So I'm there to solve problems. But as a craftsperson, as someone who enjoys building things, and I love building things, I love sorting out systems, the part that I don't like is if I'm in a situation where my job becomes just adding new things all the time. And when it comes to optimization and stuff like that, not really having time to do that, updating the architecture. It's much less of a problem than my current role. I actually quite like the client that my team is working with. But in a previous role, there was some just really ridiculous things that happened. Like literally like 6 weeks of my salary, 6 weeks of me working on a feature that suddenly the stakeholders decided we don't want that on mobile anymore, so just drop it. So it's like you paid me thousands and thousands of dollars over that 6 weeks to build this thing, and then you don't want it. And you made that decision basically right when I finished building it. So that as a craftsperson kind of sucks. What's up, Moataz? So that's the part of my job I don't enjoy. So the thing is, at the end of the day, I do enjoy coding. There's things about being a coder professionally that I don't enjoy so much. And there's certain problems I don't enjoy solving very much in any situation. So the honest truth is that I've been doing GUI development, graphical user interface development, for almost 10 years, actually. And I don't actually enjoy GUI development is not very exciting to me. I would actually rather just write algorithms that had nothing to do with pixels on the front end. There's certain aspects of GUI development I do like, but it's not an interesting problem for me. And so that's the part where it's like, to answer your question in a very long and rambly way, I do enjoy coding. I see myself coding at least a little bit, possibly for the rest of my life, although realistically, I don't know if coding is what we'll be doing in 20 years' time if we don't blow ourselves up. For the foreseeable future, I do imagine myself doing coding in some respects, but I'm not married to coding. I'm not one of those people who's like coding is life and blah blah blah, and if you don't enjoy it, do some like no, I'm here. I enjoy it enough. I would far rather write code for a living than work in kitchens for a living, which is what I did for years. But do I want to spend the rest of my life building GUI apps? No. I'll do that as long as I need to, but yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do. Hopefully that kind of answers your questions. Very fun question, though. All right. Erd. I don't know why I like your name, Erd. What's your opinion on freelancing versus working full-time job for an Android developer career. So I can only speak to this one. Oh, that was a good voice crack. Check out Don Felker's channel / content for more info on freelancing. Don is an OG and someone I respect very much as a developer, and he has a lot of great content. So regarding like freelancing and contracting, I think so these are both perfectly viable paths that are going to have different problems and complications. I can't speak very much to this, but as a freelancer, probably your initial difficulty is going to be getting your first clients. And I do recommend his channel for info on how to do that. And I almost imagine that it would be more important to be a content creator and to like at least write blogs and stuff as a freelancer than it would be to just work full time as an Android developer. This part, the content creation that I've done, and the reason I'm mentioning this is it was just asked earlier about how content creation helped my career. So it's kind of fresh in my brain. But yeah, not super important for this role, although it can be useful. I would think with freelancing, you need ways to get your initial jobs and build up your portfolio. As far as like which to do, I think it's really going to depend on your life situation. If you're a good freelancer, oftentimes you can get paid more dollar per hour, so your revenue will actually be higher. It's just as a freelancer or a contractor, you're not generally going to get benefits. So you're not going to get like dental and medical coverage and those sorts of things. But typically you'll be paid more. That's sort of how that trade-off works. So, I mean, to be honest, probably I would prefer contracting for a company than working full time because I prefer to manage my own finances. But the cool thing about being a full time salaried developer is you have a salary. Unless you get laid off or something like that, you have guaranteed income and you kind of know what to expect. So it's almost like you're trading comfort and stability for potentially more money and more risk is really generally how it works. But with that being said, I would imagine it sucks starting out as a freelancer because you're possibly going to have to accept jobs that aren't ideal. Hopefully they're pretty good. You're going to have to really market yourself and build a portfolio. So yeah, that's really all I think I have to say about that. Check out Don Felker's channel. And yeah. Yes, what my opinion is, they're both totally valid paths. I think it just depends on your situation and your preferences. What's up, Prenchel? Who next? Oh, I can answer this one. What do you think about Jetpack Compose? Have many companies transferred to it, or are most still using XML? My opinion, and I don't have the best metrics on this, but understand that there's a lot of people who are blowing smoke up your ass about this. And when I say blowing smoke up your ass, it's an English expression for lying. So I think a lot more companies, particularly established companies that have existing code bases, are still using XML. The previous job I had, which I was working in less than a year ago, was using pure XML, and this was like a new application. And my current company, we use a little bit of Compose, but like 98% of the UI is in XML. So what do I think about Compose? I love the idea. I'm not a Compose hater. I don't tend to hate on libraries and frameworks arbitrarily. If I had the chance, I would code most of an application in Compose. There would be certain things where Compose doesn't support it very well that I would be happy to throw that in like a Compose view or whatever the hell it's called, because the interoperability is actually pretty good. One major issue I've noticed is web views. Sorry about that. Web views are kind of an issue. So, but yeah, I really like Compose. I would far rather write my UI in Kotlin than I would in XML. I am not a fan of writing UI in XML. But with that being said, I think a lot of people, many of whom want to fit into a tribe and want to toe the line of the Android developer relations team. And I'm not hating on the developer relations team. I love them. I think most of them are great people and they crank out a lot of great content. So I'm not hating here. But you've got to understand that they're incentivized to get you to adopt Compose. That's what they're working on. That's what they want you to use. And so, and then there's a lot of people who are sort of like fanboys and fangirls of that sort of group, which is okay, who want you to think that you should never use XML or companies don't use XML. Companies still use XML. And there's use cases where I think objectively the better decision is to use XML. In my opinion, I think we're in a stage where Compose is stable and useful enough that probably most of your application could be written in Compose pretty safely. I personally would rather do that, but there's still cases where I would do something in XML. I wrote a tutorial recently, and a lot of people just didn't understand what I was doing with this because part of the tutorial was XML and part of it was Compose. And certain people, mostly junior developers, were like, why didn't you just write it in Compose? Compose is the new thing. And it's like, okay, listen. Most companies I'm aware of that have existing apps at least have a significant portion of their code base in XML. So I'm trying to teach you how to work with these things together, as opposed to being like, let's just build everything in Compose because that's what the cool kids do. So that's basically what I'm trying to say here. So I'm not trying to hate on anyone. I'm really not. But I'm trying to give a bit of a counterbalance to a lot of things I see on Twitter in particular, where, you know, Jetpack Compose is fully stable and you can do anything you want and large applications use it. And yeah, there's certain large companies and code bases that do leverage Compose extensively, and I think that's awesome. But for junior developers out there, I'm going to give you what I think is closer to the truth, which is that a lot of companies, I won't say most, my feeling is most, but I don't have the metrics on that, are still using XML, a lot of them. And what is one of the main reasons why that's happening? Because a lot of senior developers and lead developers don't like change. They want to use what's familiar. And there's arguments for doing that. If it's familiar and it works, then, and your stakeholders, your clients, your investors want you to just deliver a product that works and not have to worry about the instabilities of using a newer tool. And that's not a knock on Compose. That's just, we've got the old system that's been worked on for 10 years. We've got the new system that's been worked on for 3 years or whatever the case may be. That's just how it works. So anyways, hopefully I gave a somewhat balanced explanation of that. I did my best. Pink asks, is there still a scope to get hired as a Java developer? Yes. Java is a huge language with a huge number of jobs available. So absolutely. You can still get hired as a PHP developer. A lot of, you'll see these tech influencers. I'm not even going to call them like developer influencers. They're just tech influencers, and probably you'll know who I'm talking about. And they'll say, this language is garbage, use this instead. Or they'll say top 5 languages 2024 or 2023, or what is the language that is most likely to get you a job? And all they're trying, they're blowing smoke up your ass, basically. Yeah, if you, like, Java is a great example. Like, there's still lots of Java jobs out there. It might be a little bit trickier than, say, getting started as a junior Python developer, but what I'm trying to say here is if you are good at what you do, let's actually answer this in text. If you are good at what you do, people will pay you to do it. Flat out. This is like the law of the friggin' universe. I mean, yeah, it depends a little bit on the skill. Like, if you're the world's best juggler, you can go to like juggling competitions and probably make a little bit of money, or maybe you make a YouTube channel. So maybe some skills are more profitable than others. But if you're a really, really good Java developer and you have like an example project or like a Java server, um, a great Java desktop application, blah, 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 then you'll find work. It might take a while. You might have to apply to like 50 different jobs, but if you keep trying, you'll eventually get it. This is an interesting question. Sahil asks, how do you handle a situation where you want to build something but not much info is available around it? I have to ask Sahil, um, are the requirements coming from somebody else, or is this something you are building, like your own project? Because my answer would change completely depending on who has control over the requirements of what you're trying to build. Okay, product specifically, but are you the one building it, or do you have to deal with clients? Is really what I'm asking, or product owners? Because basically, what I'm asking is, if you're dealing with analyzing the problem domain, that's very different from dealing with okay, so you do mean product team, sales, and marketing. Okay. The reason why I needed to clarify that is, if you're dealing with just a tricky problem domain, my answer would totally change. But what you're asking is like, so you've got a situation where you want to build something and there's not very much info available around that, and that's a very tricky situation. So yeah, off the top of my head, it kind of sounds like some people you're working with might not be doing their jobs. So I think the first thing I would suggest is try to communicate as much as possible in order to get the requirements straightened out. And this is going to depend. If you're working with clients or a team where communication is, a thing that happens, then this is mainly what I would suggest you do. And it depends. Like, what you're pointing to here is like, maybe there's certain things that non-technical people might not know. In any case, what I really suggest here is you've got to communicate with your team. If something's really tricky, if you don't necessarily know the answer, or there's blanks to fill in here, communicate that. Assuming that's a sense, I don't know exactly what situation you're in here, but let's just assume that the people you're working with are decent people who are capable of, being empathetic and so forth. Try to communicate with them, communicate the difficulties, and say, like, listen, there's questions I don't have answers to. I think I can find the answers to these questions, is one thing you could say, but it's going to take me some time. Or you say to them, someone needs to answer these questions, whichever you think is more appropriate. What I'm trying to get at here is, if you don't clarify these things and just jump, that was a typo, straight into building things, that could go very wrong later in the future. At the end of the day, the problem here is there's some requirements, technical or otherwise, that you need to nail down. And this is sort of blocking you from potentially building the product that the sales team is expecting, or maybe that the product owner is expecting. And part of your job as a developer oftentimes is Polter, get down. Sorry, cat. Part of your job as a developer is to basically bring the product team down to earth and sort of explain to them, like, okay, that's really cool what you're talking about, but here's what I can give you. So I think that's mainly what I would suggest here is either you're in a team where you can communicate these concerns, and then someone in that team is either going to help you or at the very least give you some extra time to solve these problems yourself if they can't point you towards who's going to help you. Or you're in a team where they expect you to have all of the answers and to deliver whatever the hell they want, in which case you're in a bad situation. And your choices are, again, just be honest with them or blow smoke up their ass. And that I've worked in a situation where the development team is blowing smoke up the ass of the product team, and the product team is blowing smoke up the ass of the development team, and it sucks. It's not fun, and it doesn't result in a good product. So I've kind of rambled, but really communication is what I feel like is the most important thing here. And whether or not that communication is successful will depend on your team, and it also depend on your ability to potentially say, I don't know the answers to these questions. I don't know what your personality is like. Maybe you're already like that. Maybe you have a big ego and you don't want to tell people, hey, I don't have the answers to these questions, or I need help with this. If that's the case, and I'm not saying it is, but if that is the case, that might be something you want to work on, is just accepting that we don't have all the answers to everything. So hopefully some part of that was useful. Kind of an open-ended question, and I was speculating a lot, but that's what came into my mind is the moment when you start to basically deliver a crappy product is when the product team is lying or has ideas that are just not possible, and that definitely happens, or they're just dumb. And then when the developers are not communicating, hey, we need to adjust this a little bit, or hey, I need more support in order to deliver this product. And if you can't have that open dialogue, you probably need to find a different team. Hopefully that was useful. USA, YouTube, USA, USA. Sorry, that was not deliberate. Writing asks. Why is dagger hilt so hard to learn? There's a number of reasons. Firstly, if you don't understand what it is doing, then it feels like this. It feels like magic, and magic I don't. So when you hear the term magic in programming, it's generally a bad thing. So it's a saying, if something feels like magic, it means I have no idea how this thing works or what it's doing. I just know that if I put certain things in it and configure some things, it solves a problem. And that's bad. Firstly, if you don't understand what it's doing, it's really tough. Annotations are also kind of magical to most junior/intermediate devs. So that's another thing. Code generation at compile time isn't always obvious. There's so many ways to configure it that are totally contextual. Like there's ways to do it which is really easy. Not really easy. There's ways to do it which is pretty easy, which would be like just having like a single app module and app component for the whole app. And then there's like scoping, which is a fancy word for life cycles. You could, maybe you're doing this in a multi-module app, which makes it even more fun. So there isn't like just a single, it's very hard to find like a way to do it which plugs directly into the problem you're trying to solve. It can happen, and over time better examples are out there. So there's a lot of different reasons why. I don't have time to give you a long explanation of these different things. I have a lot of content on dependency injection and inversion of control. The first thing I want you to understand is that inversion of control, and I don't have time, just understand I'm skipping a lot of details here. DI is actually really simple. It's, in my opinion, one of the simplest concepts in programming that I've come across. The problem is people confuse the concept with Dagger, and that's where people get really messed up. And then there's like coin and coding, which also are magic. Like slap these annotations on and then it generates a service locator and solves all your problems for you, allegedly. What I suggest for you, if you want to learn this, learn how to write DI code by hand, so without any libraries. Start there, and what you'll probably see is that this code is actually pretty simple to write until you need scoping, and scoping, scope is another word for life cycle, basically, if that's useful. Learn to write this code in a simple project by hand, and I have some tutorials on how to do that. There's lots of other tutorials you can find. But that's what I suggest for you. And once you understand what these tools are doing for you, that's sort of one of the most important steps. And then as far as figuring out how Dagger fulfills this for you, the actual inversion of control, it's a little complicated. Like Dagger comes from the term, so DAG, directed acyclic graph. And you don't need to learn what this is, but basically it's a graph of it's a network of dependencies. So the classes you're using have their dependencies, and Dagger figures out how to satisfy those dependencies by generating code. And that's another thing that can be tricky. By generating code that basically, in the simplest terms I can explain it to you, Dagger will write this code that you would write by hand. The code required to build things, Dagger will write that for you, or at least most of it. But if you don't know what that code looks like, which, again, it's actually really simple code. It's generally just a whole bunch of constructors, constructor calls, and then sort of linking them together. If you don't understand this critical step, then it's going to be very hard for you to grasp how Dagger works. Hopefully that was useful. Let's see here. I only have 11 minutes here, so I might go through these a little bit quicker. Video tests. What are some best practices in terms of monitoring info logs and crash logs in production apps, apart from Crashlytics, especially things we're doing in foreground service and hard to reproduce? Yeah, that's a good question. So I can't tell you exactly what I use what we use in the current application, but there are tools beyond Crashlytics for crash monitoring, which are very useful, and this has been critically important for the current app that I'm working on, because we deal a lot with media, like anywhere, like it could be audio media, but oftentimes it's high quality video media, and loading large amounts of it. And so performance and crashes and things like that can tend to pop up when you're adding new features to an app like that. So we use this extensively and we check it regularly. And I don't really want to give you the exact name of what we use because I feel like that would be a little bit breaking NDA. And as far as foreground service and difficult to reproduce crashes, I'm just trying to think of any useful info I can give here. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Another thing is like testing on a variety of different devices. So like having a really cheap Samsung phone, for example, or a Huawei, depending on your location, and then also having like a more recent phone. I don't think I have anything else really useful to say beyond that, but I do like our team uses analytics a lot for crashes, and we monitor other like device metrics and stuff like that. So it's I can't. The problem is I can't really go into much detail about it because I'd basically be talking about what we use internally. But yeah, not a great answer on my part, but all I can really say is we do a lot of this. I don't have any tips for you regarding like testing foreground services. We do have some hard to reproduce bugs, and generally we try really hard to get reports from customers um, about what they did to have the crash, and then we really aggressively look into the logs that we have to try and figure out and reproduce them. I don't think that was a very useful answer, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay, I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly because I got to leave soon. USA asks, why most companies don't answer after we send them task required for job application? This would be because they get a very, very large volume of submissions for a job, for like a coding challenge. And yeah, I think it's a crappy thing, to be honest. Like at the very least, they should send an automated or a copy pasted message saying thank you for your interest, please piss off or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But they should at least let you know. But yeah, a lot of companies won't even bother. And it could be because they're just evil, terrible sociopaths, or it could be that they just don't have the resources to do that. So it is what it is. That's my speculative answer. Do I know a good course for Android debugging? I actually don't. Yeah, and it is a really critical skill. There's like things you can look into is learning to use the stepper. I love the stepper. That's I really like the stepper. Um, Hilariously, the app I'm currently working in, the stepper doesn't work very well because there's so much going on in the app. But yeah, so you can also use log statements. If at all possible, I prefer to use the stepper over log statements, but in the current app I'm working in, sometimes it can take like the debug version of the app 5 minutes to load. Um, and some weird things can start happening while you're debugging. So I actually use log statements quite extensively for the first time in my career because I've never been a fan of logs because I don't like modifying the source code to have to look what's going on. But this is a perfectly valid way to do it. And then yeah, those would be like I think the core things, and then like creating replication steps. Really aggressively try to figure out exactly what's happening to cause the error. Those would be my suggestions. All right. Abdallah asks, I got laid off from my company. Hey, just before I answer the question, I know what that feels like. I was laid off. My whole mobile team got laid off at the start of this year from my previous company. So I know what it's like. Kind of sucks. So I got laid off from my company. What is the fastest way to get a job in a place that uses best practices, new technology, and avoid companies that has legacy Java code? What I suggest for you is start by sending off a large amount of applications to the companies you want to work for. And you can look in their job postings, and generally they'll give you a pretty good idea of the tech that they either use or are looking for. I don't know why I put a question mark there. As time goes on, become less and less picky about where you apply to. Because maybe you don't end up getting a job at one of these companies, and maybe you have rent to pay at the end of the month, or maybe you're from a rich family and that's not an issue for you. In which case, just wait and keep, yeah. But the two things you want to be doing, in my opinion, keep sending lots of job applications off, volume, lots of job applications, and then keep yourself busy with a interesting / somewhat difficult personal project which uses the latest tech, just to make sure that you're really up to date on the latest tech. And that's what I would suggest for you. Final question before I have to go. Why do big companies still have Java codes in their products? There's a lot of reasons. There's a saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is very colloquial English for if it is not broken, don't change it. Many huge enterprise systems are built on top of Java code bases. So you've got legacy code. Many of the people who built those things are now senior developers and engineering managers and stuff like that, who maybe don't like to change, maybe don't see a lot of reason to change. So that's another factor. At the end of the day, if you can build a product which people use, it does not effing matter what code it's written in. It's not actually as important as many people think. It's important to us tech enthusiasts because we always want to be using the latest, greatest thing, and that's cool. We're software craftspeople. Most of us want to learn new things and don't want to just stagnate and write the same thing over and over again. But the people who use the app or the people who pay you to build the app, unless it has something to do with them, they do not give a shit what the code base is written in. So when you consider the number of experienced Java developers that are out there, the resources for learning Java, which are extensive, and the fact that it's been proved to be a viable solution, that's why so many big companies have Java code in their product. And when I say that, some of you might be thinking that I'm a Java fanboy. I'm really not. I hope I never write a line of Java code again in my life. I would far rather write Kotlin. But again, I'm not delusional enough to think that the most important thing in every situation is using the language that I want to use or using the latest tech, because it's actually not that important when it comes to the people using the app or the people paying you to build the app. They want a product, they want results, they want features, they want stability. They don't give a shit if you're able to write most of the time they don't give a shit if you're able to write the project in 40 to 60% less code, unless that means they can pay you less money. So that's basically it. It's 7:30, so I've got to go start work in a half hour. Thank you so much for showing up and asking questions. On next Monday, I will be on Twitch to do a live lesson on some topic I haven't thought about yet. And then the following Wednesday, I will be back here on the YouTubes, answering your questions. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for asking questions. Peace out.